In a world where alliances and global dynamics are always changing, NATO and BRICS are two important partnerships that shape international relations. As we look more closely at the details of these alliances, we can see how they weave together military power, economic cooperation, and political impact. Join us as we compare and contrast NATO and BRICS to find out how they are different and what effect they have on the world stage. Have you ever thought about how the goals and areas of focus of NATO and BRICS are different? What makes them different in terms of their armed power and their ability to work together economically? And most importantly, how do these partnerships change the balance of power in our world? Can NATO stay important in a time when security risks are always changing? Will BRICS continue to grow its economic power and change the way the world is governed? The answers to these questions will help us figure out where our world is going in the future. Let's dig deeper into these questions to find out what these powerful groups are hiding. We'll start with NATO, or the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It was made up of North American and European countries in 1949 as a way to protect themselves. Its main goal was to make sure that everyone was protected from possible risks, especially during the Cold War. Through a promise to defend each other, NATO tried to protect the democratic ideals, security, and independence of its member countries. At first, NATO was made up of 12 countries, most of which were in North America and Western Europe. Over the years, it has grown to have 30 members. Each member helps with the group's defense by sharing military skills, intelligence, and experience, among other things. For more secrets, do subscribe our channel. NATO has a strong military system that works well together. It is based on the idea of collective defense, which says that an attack on one member is seen as an attack on all, which leads to a group reaction. NATO holds joint military exercises, sends out peacekeeping missions, and keeps a quick reaction force to deal with new security problems as they arise. The Union has shown how strong its military is by doing things like sending troops to Afghanistan and the Balkans. Most of NATO's attention is on North America and Europe, which makes it less powerful in other parts of the world. This small area may make it harder for it to deal with global problems successfully. People often say that the United States and a few other large and strong countries control NATO. This difference in power can make it hard for smaller member states to be heard and make decisions. People have said that NATO's armed involvement in different conflicts, such as the Balkans and Afghanistan, goes too far and could make things worse instead of better. Together, NATO countries spend a lot on defense, which can put a strain on national budgets and take money away from important areas like social aid and building up infrastructure. During anti-terrorism operations, some NATO member countries have been accused of breaking people's rights, such as by torturing prisoners or mistreating them in other ways. These actions have caused a lot of trouble and raised questions about how well international human rights standards are being followed. Concerns have been made about NATO's commitment to upholding human rights values because it works with non-member states and groups like Saudi Arabia that have a mixed record on human rights. Critics say that these kinds of partnerships hurt the reputation of NATO's human rights goals. Unfair, isn't it? In times of crisis, NATO's way of making decisions based on the agreement can slow down responses and decisions, which could make it harder to move quickly and effectively. Now let's talk about BRICS, which is a term for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, which are 5 of the most important new economies. The BRICS Union was set up in 2006 to help its member countries work together on economic issues and talk to each other about politics. BRICS is not a military alliance like NATO. Instead, it is mostly about working together on business and development issues. BRICS is a group of many different countries from different continents, including both well-known and new forces. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa have a lot of the world's people, land, and economic capacity between them. Each member country is very important in setting the plan and helping the alliance reach its goals. BRICS's ability to work together on economic issues is one of its biggest strengths. The member countries all want to help the economy grow in a way that is sustainable, reduces poverty, and improves trade and investment among themselves. The New Development Bank and the Contingent Reserve Arrangement are 2 BRICS projects. The New Development Bank helps finance infrastructure and sustainable development projects, and the Contingent Reserve Arrangement gives member countries a financial safety net in times of disaster. The main difference between NATO and BRICS is in their goals and where they put their attention. NATO's main goal is to protect and defend all of its members, with a focus on armed cooperation among its members. BRICS, on the other hand, focuses on economic cooperation, growth, and talking about politics. Most of NATO's member countries are in North America and Europe, so that's where most of its power is. It has had a big impact on how security works in the region and on keeping things stable in the Euro-Atlantic area. BRICS, on the other hand, is made up of emerging economies from different continents. Together, they have a say in how the world's economy is run and challenge old power structures. Amazing, right? NATO is a strong military unit whose members spend more on defense than all of the BRICS countries put together. The alliance gains from having modern military technologies, sharing intelligence, and a defense structure that works well together. Even though BRICS doesn't have a military alliance, each of its member countries has strong military power and is spending on modernizing its military. Baffling to choose one, right? Together, the BRICS countries make up a big part of the world economy. They are responsible for a big chunk of the world's GDP, trade, and investment flows. With more unity, regional economic projects, and trade agreements, their economic power is growing. Even though each NATO country is powerful on its own, they do not have an economic system like BRICS. The political systems, economic models, and strategic interests of the BRICS countries are all different, which can make it hard to come to an agreement and work toward the same goals. These differences can sometimes make it harder for the partnership to work well and stay together. Even though the BRICS countries are all rising economies, their economies are very different. This difference can cause conflicts and make it harder to share the benefits of economic cooperation projects in a fair way. Unlike NATO, BRICS does not have a well-developed system of institutions to deal with security issues or settle disagreements. This lack of formal systems can make it harder for it to react effectively to new security threats. As the BRICS countries continue to grow as world powers, there may be more competition and different interests, which could hurt the alliance's goal of working together. Some of the BRICS countries have been criticized for how well they protect human rights and run their governments in a fair way. These worries can hurt the alliance's reputation and make people wonder if they share the same beliefs and rules. Concerns have been raised in some BRICS countries about limits on freedom of speech and the media. People aren't sure how committed these countries are to protecting human rights when they use censorship, limit press freedom, and punish people who don't agree with them. It's unbearable. Concerns have been made about democratic governance in some BRICS countries, such as limits on political participation, limits on civil society groups, and threats to the independence of the judiciary. Human rights and the rule of law can be affected by these things. Some BRICS member countries have been said to treat ethnic, religious, and gender minorities badly and make them feel like they don't belong. Human rights issues exist in places where minority rights are violated, like when religious freedom is limited or when people are treated differently. It's important to remember that the negative aspects of NATO and BRICS should be taken into account along with the good things, since both alliances have their own strengths and flaws. To figure out the overall effects and usefulness of these alliances, it's important to look at their goals, successes, and problems. Concerns about human rights can be different in each alliance partner country. Some countries may find it harder to protect human rights than others, while others may have a better track record in this area. It is important for both NATO and BRICS to talk about these issues among themselves, support dialogue, and push for people to follow international human rights standards, right? Alliances can work to improve their trustworthiness, promote human dignity, and create a more fair and inclusive world order by recognizing and solving human rights concerns. In the end, NATO and BRICS are two different groups that work together to shape global politics and foreign affairs. To understand how complicated the changing global order is, you need to know how these alliances are alike and how they are different.